The question that we ended off with was, how come the Rambam, who normally does not do this, in the middle of a series, the series is Tefillin, Mezuzah, Torah, Tzitzis. So normally it would be at the end of the series that it'd say, thank God we've had the privilege to complete this or whatever. Brich Rachmana de Sion. Blessed is the merciful one who helped us to get to this point. And here he puts it in the middle. At the end of the section of Mezuzah, that's where he puts that phrase. The question was why? And this speaks really to the essence of the question we've asked, which is why the Rambam makes the mezuzah the big deal, that this is the one that protects us, even though he says there are many so-called protective angels, tefillin, mezuzah, and tzitzis, and yet he really seems to focus on the mezuzah. Last time we learnt that the reason for that is because tefillin really only affect you when you're wearing them. And we also said that it's not the tefillin itself that has the impact, rather it's the holiness that the tefillin brings a person. The holiness is actually what keeps them focused. And in the case of tzitzis, also, it's not necessarily something that you have all the time. And tzitzis is just a reminder. You actually have to remember what the reminder is for. It doesn't do the work, so to speak, for you. Whereas the mezuzah seems to have this automatic impact on us, regardless of whether we're present or not present, close or distant. It's this constant, ongoing effect on our lives. So now, what we've got over here is we've got the Rambam using the expression, Brich Rachmana, blessed is the compassionate one, the Sion who helped us. The root of that word is siyua, which is assistance. Messiah is somebody who assists somebody else. So there are many applications for what we're about to learn, including, for example, parenting, mentorship, governance, many ways that we could look at this, because effectively what we're going to identify is 3 modes of leadership, parenting, mentorship, etc. 2 of the modes are either not helpful or not healthy, and 1 is the ideal. So let's think about this for a second. I recently heard a line that maybe we've all missed this opportunity. We've got to tell it to our kids. But the line is that anything that your child is capable of doing on their own, never do it for them. Right? What does that mean? So you get people, I know such people, maybe you know them too. I hope I don't offend anybody over here. You get people who are in their 20s, sometimes in their 30s, working in the corporate environment, successful in their own right, and the mother still packs them a lunch. Right? So, no, I'm not saying the wife. If your wife packs your lunch, that's a different story. But a mother packs a lunch for an adult child, so that's something the child could and should take care of on their own. It's a measure of independence. So that's not necessarily helpful. It's not necessarily healthy. Okay, so now that I've offended half the Jewish mothers in the world, right? Here's another example, much easier to relate to. Much easier. If a baby, a small child, a toddler, can walk, don't carry them. Right? Doesn't mean you can't carry your child. If they could walk in the circumstance, you don't have to carry them. Why do you have to take the load for something that somebody could already do for themselves? The same thing works in organizations. If you have leaders within an organization and they have staff who are on other tiers of the hierarchy of the organization, and the things that the staff could do on their own, don't do it for them. It's the art of delegation, right? To be able to ensure that somebody could not only be proficient, but they could feel adequate. That's actually a gift that you give somebody. So you know what? I heard a great strategy. Very often what do we do is, if anybody's in a leadership position, every one of us has people who report to us. It doesn't matter in what context it is. We have people who report to us. It could be the person who's employed in our home, it could be in our business environment, whatever the case is. So very often what happens is they become very reliant on us to make decisions because we're the boss. So we've got to make decisions. So I heard a very good strategy which basically says, when somebody comes to you and says, what should I do? And they're expecting you as the authority to say, do X. What you actually tell them is, why don't you come back with 3 ideas of what you should do? And then we'll discuss it. So it's a little bit longer and more tedious in the beginning. But what you're doing is, instead of doing the work for the person, you are mesayeh. You're helping them. Helping them doesn't just mean in the now. Helping them means you're creating a framework for their own independence, their own initiative. Those are all good things.
The word's empowerment.
Right, empower, exactly. You're empowering people.
Teaching them how to fit.
Exactly. Or in this case, teaching them how to put on tefillin. Okay. So now let's put this back into our scenario. The Rambam's using the expression, Brich Rachmana, blessed is the merciful one, the Sion, who assists us. You could say it's in the context just simply of who assisted me in getting this far in my project. It's a project of 14 volumes of Jewish law, and at this point, he is only in the 2nd book of the 14. So he's saying, thank God, for assisting me so far, and the implication is, please God, help me further. But what he's done by choosing to put that phrase after mezuzah is he's saying, you know what, we've just spoken about mezuzah. Mezuzah is an example of mesayeh. That's a scenario where Hashem is assisting us in our spiritual path. What does it mean is assisting us here in our spiritual path? So let's look at tefillin versus mezuzah versus tzitzis, or let's go tefillin, tzitzis, and then mezuzah, and see what the difference is. In the case of tefillin, the Rambam wrote that as long as a person has tefillin on their arm and tefillin on their head, the holiness of that tefillin will ensure that the person is not distracted from their spiritual objectives. In other words, you put on tefillin, and now Hashem does the work for you. It's not like you put on tefillin, and then that motivates you that you should do something different. The fact that you have that tefillin, it's physical, it's tactile. You can feel the straps on your arm, you can feel the tefillin on your head. The likelihood is that when you're wearing tefillin, you're in a specific environment, and hopefully in a particular mindset, the tefillin hold you. They keep you on the straight and narrow. They keep you inspired. You're not doing much. Of course, you're doing things when you have your tefillin on. You're davening, etc. But the fact that tefillin keeps a person focused, in the Rambam's words, it said your mind does not get distracted from Hashem. That is essentially Hashem doing the work for you. He hasn't yet delegated responsibility to you. He's basically said, follow this particular method, and this method will hold you in focus as long as you're using the method. So tefillin is not really an example of mesayeh, where Hashem is assisting our spiritual path. Tefillin is an example of Hashem doing something for us. He's saying, you wrap up in this particular way, and I'll do something for you. It's going to have an effect on you. So that's the one example of where you are not helping, even though you are doing for the person. That'd be similar to the individual who's constantly saving somebody from themselves, and always stepping in, and always enabling them, and not empowering them. Then you get the opposite extreme. The opposite extreme is where a person says, okay, look, here's an idea, run with it. Now you could say, look, I'm being a very benevolent leader, I'm empowering people, I'm delegating, all the great and wonderful things that they tell us. I want my child to make their own decisions. It's like, it reminds me of the person who once told me that they're not going to send their children to have a Jewish education because they want them to make an informed decision when they grow up about how they want to live their lives. So trying to work out, how do you have an informed decision without information? You can't have no exposure to your own heritage and then be expected to make an informed decision. No, I want my child to have independence. Now, in today's world, that's extremely common. There are many people who say, my parenting style is, I don't want to impose on my child, and I don't want to be seen as a dictator, so my child must work things out. And they say this even sometimes from the youngest age. It's not particularly helpful. You'd have to have somebody with a tremendous amount of maturity to be left in that scenario. In fact, we know very, very well that if you educate a child without boundaries, guidance, structure, that it actually creates a tremendous amount of anxiety for the child. That's besides the point. So the opposite extreme is if a person just says, here, read this book. Do these things. Or think about it on your own. I'll give you an outline to work with. Now, it's a very powerful thing if a person can use it, but it's not messiah. It's not holding somebody's hand. It's not guiding them. It's not training them. It's not coaching them. It's not empowering them. So tzitzis, the Rambam writes that the way tzitzis works is that the Torah decided that tzitzis will be an equivalent to all of the mitzvahs. And we spoke about this because the word plus the value of the knots and the strings equals to 613. And the Torah tells us, you'll look at your tzitzis, and that will remind you that Hashem exists and that you're supposed to do the mitzvahs. So, you know what that's like? That's like having a reminder on your phone. Now, there are different kinds of people with reminders on their phones. There are the people, when the reminder comes up, they immediately take care of whatever the reminder was about. There are the people who snooze the reminder, and that could be an ongoing exercise that could go for hours or days. And there are people who just say, oh, there's the reminder, dismiss. And they don't even pay attention to it. So you got to look at the tzitzis, or zachartem, and the tzitzis are going to help you to remember what you have to do. Okay, that's not a guarantee I'm going to do it. You reminded me. So they're the parent who reminds the child, brush your teeth. Okay, maybe they will, maybe they won't. Depends on the child, depends on how tired they are, depends on a whole lot of factors. So tzitzis also cannot be called messiah, even though tefillin and tzitzis both they're part of the team of so-called protective angels that keep a person focused, etc. But the way tzitzis does it is just to say, beep, here's your reminder. Now what you're going to do with that reminder is completely up to you. It's not something that is a trigger in the same way as a mezuzah is. And that's what the Rambam wants to tell us. The Rambam wants us to understand that mezuzah, this is an incredible technology that we have on our doors. And the nature of that technology is that every time you walk through the door, and in whatever direction it is, it's going to not just remind you of what it is to be Jewish. I'm a Jewish person. I have a mezuzah on my door. Maybe I'll have somebody come visit my house and they'll say, what's that? And I'll have to explain to them, like Onkelos did, that this is symbolic and it represents how Hashem protects me, etc. All of that stuff. But it's not just that it's a reminder on my door. The fact is that it gives me a boost every time. That's the Rambam's language. It says it wakes me up. It protects me from inappropriate behavior. Not like the tefillin that when it's on me, it does all the work for me. The mezuzah is giving me, so to speak, like these impulses, like nudges, to say, go, do it, be a better Jew. So therefore, in the context of the mezuzah, he says, Brich Rachmana Desayon. We have to be grateful to Hashem, who is so compassionate, that he chose to help us on our spiritual journey. And where's that most clearly manifest? In the mezuzah. It's not like the tefillin that completely takes us over for the period we have the tefillin on. It's not like the tzitzis that's just the little pop-up reminder. This is something that is built in, that's supposed to seep into our heads to help us to be able to see the world differently and to respond. In fact, you know what it really means to remember something? Have you ever had this conversation? Most likely with your wife. Your wife says, remember to get X. When you go to the shop, remember to get X. You come home from the shop, everything except X. So she says, what happened? I thought I asked you to get the laundry detergent. I asked you, remember the laundry detergent. You say, I did remember, just not at the right time. So there's a line, a phrase in the Megillah, in the Purim story, right at the end of the Purim story, it says, V'hayomim ha'eleh, by virtue of the fact that they were going to institute Purim and write a Megillah, so because of that, Hayomim ha'eleh, these days, Nizkarim, would be remembered, V'nasim, and therefore would be enacted. And from that we learn a very interesting principle, that the true meaning of remembering something is when you remember to apply it. To remember something, the person, you forgot my birthday. No, I remembered. Okay, great. Well, why don't you wish me happy birthday? Nizkarim and nasim. The ultimate expression of remembering something is when you apply it into a behavior, into an action. So tzitzis is a reminder, but we're not guaranteed that it's going to translate into an action. Mezuzah, the Rambam is telling us there's some kind of a guarantee. You have that mezuzah on the door, it's going to get into your life. It's going to push you. Maybe you'll say, but it's never happened to me, I had the mezuzah on my door, it never happened. I don't know. Sometimes we're not conscious of the way in which our environment influences us, and sometimes we're not conscious of the things that we do, not even thinking about it because we don't attribute it to the mezuzah, but here the Rambam is attributing it to the mezuzah. Now it goes one step further, you see. It's not just that these are three different ways of how Hashem protects us from inappropriate thoughts or behaviors. It's not just that it's three different ways. They operate in totally different spheres. See, here's the thing. When you wear tefillin, in the typical scenario, where are you? In shul. Most likely you're in shul. Most likely in shul. And if you're not in shul, you're davening. In other words, you have stepped out of ordinary life and you're completely in an environment that is spiritually healthy. And the tefillin are what you wear during that period. But the environment is conducive to holiness. When you put on tzitzis, okay, so you put on tzitzis, you wear your tzitzis, but when are you required to wear tzitzis? Because remember, we said you don't have to wear the four-cornered garment. So if you choose to wear different kind of clothes, you're not technically obligated in tzitzis. So when's the one time that you have to wear tzitzis? When you daven. Same principle. Put on a talis to daven. So in all likelihood, at the time that you're wearing tzitzis in the so-called obligatory way, as opposed to how we wear tzitzis every single day, which is a show of our dedication to Hashem. But when we're obligated to wear tzitzis, you're in a comfortable, holy environment. Now, when it comes to mezuzah, here's a funny thought. What does the Torah say? Where are you supposed to put the mezuzahs? On your doorpost. Right? Right? Does not say put it on the entrance to your home or the entrance to your room. It says on the doorpost, which means a doorpost could be an entrance or it could be an exit. And the Rambam specifies that the power of the mezuzah is that it has an impact on you when you enter your home or the room that has the mezuzah, but it also has an impact when you leave your home or the room when you have the mezuzah. Now, right at the beginning of this conversation, we discussed the fact that mezuzah has a remote impact. If I have tefillin sitting in my bag, those tefillin are not having any influence on my life at this point, other than the residual holiness from the fact that I wore tefillin in the morning. But the tefillin themselves are not remotely affecting me right now. Same thing with tzitzis. My talis is in my talis bag. My tzitzis are folded up and sitting in the cupboard. They're not currently having an effect on me because their area of influence is in a, so to speak, healthy environment, in a spiritual environment. If I'm in a spiritual environment, tefillin are part of my life, tzitzis are part of my life. The whole point of a mezuzah is that it's supposed to impact the person when you come into your home. So it's supposed to influence the atmosphere in your home and the behavior in your home, the conduct in your home, the awareness that you have in your home. But equally, the mezuzah is supposed to impact you when you leave your home. Therefore, what the mezuzah represents is not only that Hashem helps us when we are actively engaged in spiritual activities like the tefillin and the tzitzis do. The mezuzah is how Hashem helps us even when we are engaged in ordinary stuff that doesn't have a specific spiritual connotation. That's not necessarily about right now I'm doing a mitzvah. I might not be doing a mitzvah. I might be walking the dog. I might be, Dave knows that he's always got to be careful walking the dog because I'm always checking, when he comes past. So, right? I could be walking the dog. I could be having a business meeting. I could be driving my car. I could be having a coffee. Those things are not innately spiritual experiences. The power of the mezuzah is that Hashem assists me, even in those places, to be able to have a holy aspect to that experience. So, for example, easy example, you're driving in your car, as we do, right? Many of us spend a lot of time in our cars. So if I choose while I'm in the car to listen to content that is Torah content, my drive is a holy drive. It's a completely different concept. I'm now no longer just simply getting from point A to B, or getting frustrated at whichever radio station I'm listening to that is so biased and full of nonsense, I'm filling my car and my mind with Torah content. If a person, for example, does exercise, and they are aware of the fact that the Rambam writes that in order to have a healthy body is part of how you serve Hashem, then I'm not just doing exercise, I'm bringing some holiness into that experience. So that's how a Jewish person is supposed to live their lives. We're supposed to infuse everything with a sense of meaning and a sense of holiness. The mezuzah helps us to do that. The mezuzah says you don't have to wait till you get home. You don't have to wait till you're in shul. You don't have to wrap yourself up into the protective gear of the talis and tefillin, and only then will you have a holy and meaningful experience. The mezuzah says you could do this wherever you go, and therefore the Rambam says, Brich Rachmana Dasayan, great and thanks and praise to Hashem, who is so merciful, who is so compassionate, that He's chosen to assist us to have a spiritual, holy experience in every facet of our lives. But of course, only if we choose to do so. He's not doing the work for us. He's only giving us the empowerment that if we choose to do the work, we'll succeed in it. So next time you kiss the mezuzah, load up on the spiritual intention, and then the whole day is a different day.